However many push-ups you think you can do, you might be able to do a few more or a lot more, my friend, with just a few small tweaks that I'll show you. If you ever notice how some people, maybe you, work out regularly and seem to add on a couple of reps every week, but some people get started and they add on things very quickly. They were doing 0 and suddenly they're doing like 30 plus a couple of weeks later. This is partially how that happens. And before we get started, I would like for you to think about how you do push-ups right now. You don't have to do one right now, but you can kind of sit up and think about how you do it. And let me know if that movement changes by the end of this video, because I'm curious. And we'll start with like 5 points, but the reason why that works is you may have noticed that different people do push-ups slightly differently. Like my push-ups have a slightly different vibe, and people who would otherwise know what they're doing and do know what they're doing, like athletes and experienced bodybuilders, have slight differences in technique. And part of that is their body type, but part of that is also their goals. And I'll show you at the end how you can easily put it together. And the reason why this matters is that practicing any of those push-up types will increase the number of push-ups you can do. But if your goal is to do more push-ups, then it's quite likely there might be a small change you can make in your technique that will allow you to use your muscles more effectively and efficiently. And with this, you can unlock beast mode, or as I call it, B mode, which I think is even better because Bs are apparently very important. Okay, we can start off with shoulders, or perhaps even shoulder blades. Now, I'm not a shoulderologist, but I believe they're connected, and that's why they both have shoulder in the name. Okay, so before we go to the ground, you can see that if you do a push-up, your arms bend like this. But even if we keep our arms straight, we also have this lever, right? We can go forward, we can go back, we can go up, we can go down. This is sometimes called protraction, this is retraction, this is up, this is down, I guess elevation or depression, but you may be able to remember them as shrug or unshrug. In general, you want to stay with unshrug down here with most push-ups. So unshrug is simple, but the two form cues that you'll hear from different trainers is some wanting to keep your shoulders back and down the entire time and move this. This is a great way to feel your chest. If you have trouble feeling your chest during push-ups, this can help. Just pushing your shoulders back and down and go like this, even in a chair. You can follow along for this video. You might be able to feel your chest muscles engage just a little bit more. Think about bringing the inside of your elbows together like so. And some tell you to maintain this the entire time, and some tell you to protract at the top. So go like this, down, whoop, like this. And some just have you go neutral. We can talk about which one's better for you at the end. But some calisthenics people will have you try to go protracted the entire time. If your goal is to increase the number of push-ups you want to do, you generally don't want to do that. You want to choose one of the other ones. Back and down like this is usually a good rule of thumb. I'm not great at making people wait till the end. I just want to give it to you now. I don't know if that's optimal for YouTube, but here I am. And next we have our elbows. Psych, it is still our shoulders, or as I call them sometimes, the shouldies. But it is sometimes referred to as elbow flare. So you see some people do push-ups like this, you see some people do it like this, see some people do it slightly wider, and you see some really bold souls do this. Generally want to avoid that, the T-pose push-up, not for everyone. But as you can see, even though it's called elbow flare, the elbow can just not move, and it's the shoulder that's moving. You even straighten out and do one of these bad boys. It's an entirely different exercise. I should stay focused. We can go more in depth, but if I were to summarize, generally like this, close to the chest, it's usually more shoulders, more triceps, a little bit more flared out like this. Depending on where the hands are, is usually a little bit more chest. Good rule of thumb is usually 30-degree flare, 45, some would say 45 for more chest. I've always done better with about 30 for whatever reason. You can't quite see the angle. And just like for this next one, you can see it a little better against a tree. By the way, if you're watching this and you're under like 3 good push-ups, then you might make more progress, regardless of technique, doing slightly easier variations like the knee push-up or the advanced incline push-up. Of course, if you want to build the push-ups and more, we have a free fitness routine on our website. You can start from almost any fitness level. You don't have to sign up. There's a book version, ebook version, and app version if you want it. Oh, and cards if you like drawings. Pretty much everything I say in this video will still apply to those easier variations, but you just might be able to make faster progress overall doing those. So, elbow. You may notice that some people can keep their elbows almost perpendicular to where they're pushing, kind of like so, like this. And you can just try it against the wall if you're following along. You can kind of feel the chest activate a little bit more, or the elbow, or the wrist. You'll see why in a second. But notice the difference between that and if I were to bend a little bit more like this. And if you feel more elbow tension just from watching that, and that is not surprising. The chest is often considered a stronger muscle than the triceps, which is what you're using when you're doing a lot of elbow bend. You're still using chest, shoulders, triceps, a little bit of forearm in almost all push-up variations, but the emphasis can change a lot depending on how you're doing them. However, some people just have perhaps a little stronger arms, and they get into habit early on of doing a triceps arm dominant kind of push-up, which is fine. But as you'll see when we approach the end of the video, when you try to do as many push-ups as you can, you'll feel a failure point, like, oh, I can't do any more because my elbow is giving out, because my arm is giving out. Keep note of those, because those might be opportunities for you to increase the amount of push-ups you can do, perhaps. And if you are doing a very elbow bendy type of push-up like this, and you're like, man, I could do 5, my friend could do 15. Why is he so much stronger? You might actually be stronger, but you might just be doing it a harder way. A good rule of thumb here for push-ups and bench press and a lot of pushing motions is they're meant usually to be a chest dominant movement, but it's assisted by the triceps. So we don't want to be completely perpendicular. You might feel them bend a little bit, but a good rule of thumb might be to bend them not quite as much and just see how that feels for you. You'll notice that if you try to keep them completely perpendicular, you'll feel more stress on the shoulder, depending on where you place your hands, so just play with it a bit. And that brings me into my next point, I think my last point. And this one actually limits a lot of people, and we can see it quite easily on a wall or a tree push-up, like so. And that is where you place your hands and how much you're trying to bend and use your wrist as a result. It also affects, as you can see, the rest of your other joints. So hand placement really matters. Generally, we want shoulders, like so, maybe slightly wider and a little bit down. The variation you do does matter, like what you do on wall push-ups and incline push-ups. Might be different from when you do full push-ups, but it's a good rule of thumb. But as you do more and more push-ups, if you feel your wrist giving out, it's very common on beginners doing wall push-ups. And you're like, man, I can't do a lot of wall push-ups. The goal is 50? That seems so high. First of all, we all start somewhere, right? But you might also be limited by your smaller joints. You might be very good at wall push-ups. There was a guy who talked to me. He said he couldn't do 5 wall push-ups. I was like, we all start somewhere, but I'm not sure about that. And sure enough, like 2 or 3 weeks later, he was doing like 15 plus regular full push-ups. So this applies to a lot of people, and I've seen this across many different people that I've talked to. Technique matters, guys. Remember, you gotta go B mode. Just by adjusting where you place your hands and how much you flare your arms, you can make a substantial difference to how much strain and how limiting your wrist is on your push-ups. If you really need it, there are wrist wraps, and you can also use different grips to help with your push-ups. But if you're medically cleared for exercise, try this stuff first. So if you watched so far, there's one more test you can try to kind of feel this. But if you've been following along, again, you could do most of those things just in your chair or wherever you are and just practicing the movements in the air and seeing how that feels. Let me know if this has changed. If you're like, yes, there was an unlock. There might not be, which is fine. You might have to practice, or your technique might already be fine. Don't let me accidentally convince you into thinking you're doing something wrong when you're actually doing push-ups perfectly fine. Sometimes progress just takes time. But what you can do is you can try a push-up set right now. It doesn't have to be full push-ups. You can do whatever variation you want. And you can just do this and do as many as you safely can. Of course, warm up if you need to warm up. As you approach the end, I would like for you to take note of what parts are burning, right? What parts feel like they can't carry on anymore. Because you should feel some in your chest. You should feel some in your arms. You might feel all of the above. This is not wrong. This is pretty common because it's a compound exercise. But if you're like this and you notice like, man, I feel like I could do more, but my wrist is kind of bothering me, slightly adjust. Do that. Write it down, in fact. Maybe you can film yourself. You don't have to show anyone, but just watch back. And you may notice some things that you didn't know about. And if you had this limiting factor, you're like, man, I really do feel it in my shoulders. Is it supposed to be that much in my shoulders? And you watch back and you're like, my arms are actually way down here, so I feel it a lot in my wrist, a lot in my shoulders. What can I do to tweak that? And if you tweak that, you might immediately feel it be easier and suddenly do a lot more push-ups. But more likely, it will probably take a couple of sessions of practice, not only for your muscles to adjust, but for your brain to get used to the new, slightly different movement pattern. So doing as many push-ups as you safely can is kind of like a pressure test to find the failure points of where you might be able to make those small tweaks that we discussed through this video and adjust it a little bit so it feels easier, simpler, or right for you. And that is how you can unlock a lot more push-ups. I hope this video can help you or a friend. Feel free to share. Sharing does seem to help a lot nowadays, so thank you if you do. But if not, thank you for hanging out with me. I really appreciate that. Have a wonderful, beautiful day, my friend. Whatcha?